I grew up in San Antonio, just a short drive from SeaWorld, where killer whales leapt for cheering crowds long before I ever understood the coast. Picture this. The lights go down, the music swells. You're sitting in a stadium full of people, the air thick with popcorn, sunscreen, and anticipation. A giant screen flashes slow motion footage of a black and white giant slicing through the water. Children are bouncing in their seats. Adults have their phones out. Everyone's waiting for the star of the show. Then he appears. 6 tons of muscle and memory erupts from the pool, suspended in the air like something that shouldn't exist, and yet somehow does. Water explodes. People scream with delight. Cameras flash. He crashes back down, sending a wave over the first few rows. We call them the splash zone, like it's a blessing, like being baptized in his captivity as part of the experience. You don't know his language. You don't know his family. You don't know what they had to do to get him here. You just know he's beautiful. You know his name. Here's what they don't tell you in the pre-show. Killer whales aren't just killer whales. They are nations. They come from different oceans, different coasts, different climates. They have distinct cultures. Some hunt seals, some specialize in fish, some chase sharks, some teach their young to intentionally beach themselves to catch prey. They have dialects, and languages we can't understand, but that we can clearly measure. Pods across the world don't just sound different, they think different. They move different. They have rituals, customs, and patterns that have been passed down over generations. An orca born in the cold coastal waters of Iceland does not speak the same acoustic language as an orca born off the Pacific Northwest. A calf in Argentina learns different skills than one in the Antarctic. The way a child in Lagos grows up with different stories, songs, and survival codes than a child in Kingston or New Orleans. They have aunties, they have elders, they have play, they have grief. A matriarch dies and the pod's behavior changes. They circle, they linger, they carry the body, they remember. They are not props, they are people without passports. To build this thing you clap for, someone has to do something you don't want to look at. Tranquilizer darts, motorboats, helicopters, a calf crying out while the pod tries to intervene and count. They track a family, isolate the young, and drive them into nets. The water fills with panic. Mothers scream in a frequency that hurts to listen to when you hear it on old recordings. Some adults refuse to leave until humans drop charges into the water to scare them away. Even then, they hover, desperate. You load the babies onto a boat anyway. You send one to Florida, one to California, one to Texas, one to Europe. You separate families, break languages, shatter social worlds, and then you throw strangers together in a concrete box and call it a pod. The only thing they have in common is that they are large, black and white, and economically useful. Sound familiar yet? Not quite? Good. Keep walking with me. Now they're Shamu, or Namu, or Kandu, or Tilikum, or some other marketable name. They are no longer nations, just performers. Different dialects, different cultures, different oceans. It doesn't matter. In the tank, they are just whales. Interchangeable, swappable, aesthetic. They're forced to breathe. Their sexual lives become contracts. Their children are born into captivity, never knowing the ocean, never learning the songs of the wild. Their family tree is property. Their womb is a revenue stream. Their schedule is dictated. Their food is controlled. Their rest is conditional. Their space is measured in gallons, not horizons. And still, because they are who they are, social, intelligent, adaptable, they do what intelligent, social, adaptable beings do. They try to build a life out of what's left. They create new social structures inside the tank. They improvise new communication patterns, hybrid dialects, merging fragments of the old. They invent new play, new rituals, new hierarchies. Not because they are happy, because they are alive. After a few generations, captivity is all they know. Grandchildren of the original wild-caught calves have never heard the open ocean. They circle the same pool day after day while a loudspeaker blasts pop music overhead. And every once in a while, something snaps. A trainer is dragged under. A whale refuses to let go. A body is pinned to the bottom of the pool. Bones are broken, limbs are crushed. A life is ended. News breaks. Killer whale kills trainer. SeaWorld under fire. Is captivity cruel? Documentaries are made, protest signs are printed, hashtags trend, people write think pieces and books and laws. They dig into the archives and find out how these waves were captured, how they were treated, how long they live in the wild versus in the tank. The conversation changes. What used to be a fun family outing becomes a moral question. Children who once wore Shamu t-shirts grow up to sign petitions against Shamu's cage. Boycotts happen, attendance drop, politicians draft legislation. And in the midst of all that, something important happens. The whale is not seen as a monster. He is seen as a victim. People say things like, of course he snapped. What did we expect? You'd go crazy too if you were locked up like that. He's not evil, he's traumatized. We begin as a culture to understand his violence as a symptom, not his essence. His rage becomes legible, his suffering becomes visible, his captivity becomes the crime. Then comes the next moral step. If we did this to them, what do we owe them? We start to ask, can they be released? Can they survive on their own? Do they remember how to hunt? Do they have a pod to rejoin? Many of them don't. Most were born in concrete. They have no map to anything but the tank. So the conversation shifts again. If we can't simply set them free, then we have to care for them, not as entertainment, as obligation. Because the harm is ours. Because the captivity is ongoing. Because the situation they are in did not simply happen. It was created. But notice what you don't hear in that conversation. You don't hear, well, I didn't personally capture this whale, so why should I care? You don't hear, nobody who locked up his grandparents is still alive, so this isn't my responsibility. You don't hear, the past is the past. Let's move on. You don't hear, if we take better care of whales now, that should be enough. We don't owe anything for what happened back then. No. On some level, even people who've never read a single book on ethics understand. If you are still enjoying the benefits of the system that harmed them, you're not neutral. You're downstream of a crime. And downstream has duties. So we use words like reform, phrase out, sanctuary, justice for whales. Now keep all of that in your mind. Hold it. Don't set it down. Don't skip the emotions. Don't skip the empathy. Stay with it. Because now I'm going to tell you a story you already know, but in a way you've been trained not to feel. For centuries, ships crisscrossed the Atlantic doing something curiously similar to what those capture boats did, only on a much bigger scale. They came to West and Central Africa, to kingdoms and villages that were as different from each other as Iceland is from Argentina, as the cold North Atlantic is from the warm Caribbean reefs. They encountered Wolof, Yoruba, Igbo, Akan, Congo, Mandinka, dozens more nations with their own languages, cosmologies, economies, stories, arts, and sciences. They did not see nations, they saw labor. They kidnapped people, shattered families, branded bodies, forced marches, loaded human beings as cargo. The ocean, that great highway of empire, became the original tank, a floating prison where screams in dozens of languages echoed into unfeeling waves. On the other side of that water, in the Americas, they did what the marine parks would do centuries later on a smaller scale. They threw strangers together and said, "You are one thing now. Not Igbo, not Akan, not Congo, just black." They didn't care that the people in the fields, the ships, the auction blocks came from different nations with different dialects, customs, spiritual systems, and political structures. The only criteria that mattered were you are physically useful, you are visually identifiable, you can be bred, you can be sold, your history irrelevant, your previous identity deleted, your language punished, your family separated. You're property now. Your children are property. Your grandchildren are property. Everything you are, your back, your womb, your memory, your desire, is rerouted to serve someone else's profit. You became black the way an orca became Shamu, through violence and paperwork. And yet, because you are who you are, social, intelligent, adaptable, you did what intelligent, social, adaptable beings do. You tried to build a life out of what's left. Out of the fragments of 100 stolen nations, you built new languages, Creole, Patois, African American vernacular, new music, spirituals, jazz, blues, hip hop, new kinship structures, play cousins, church mothers, big mamas, new spiritual syntheses, voodoo, Santeria, black church traditions. You built new cultures under surveillance. You created new dances and chains. You raised children under systems designed to break you. You resisted, rebelled, escaped, educated, organized, refused, survived. Generations passed. After a while, for many, the plantation became the only world they'd ever known. Then the chain gang, then the ghetto, then the projects, then the prison. Different tanks, same logic. The middle passage never really ended. It just went indoors. And every once in a while, something inside that tank snaps, or appears to. A riot, an uprising, a rebellion. A building burns, a police car overturns. Or sometimes it's not a snap at all. Just the ordinary act of existing in the wrong skin, in the wrong place, in the wrong way, in front of the wrong gaze. A teenager in a hoodie walking home with Skittles. A child playing in the park with a toy gun. A man selling loose cigarettes. A woman sleeping in her own bed. And the state responds not with, what did we do to create these conditions, but with, what did they do to deserve what we did to them? Now go back to the whale. A 6-ton apex predator kills 3 people over the course of his captivity. By every rule of how we usually talk about danger, he should be condemned, eliminated, written off as a monster. But that's not what happens. We start to talk about trauma. We start to talk about confinement. We start to talk about mental health of a whale. We call his violence understandable. We call his captivity cruel. We say out loud, he should have never been there in the first place. We look at him and we see context. We look at him and see history. We look at him and we see what was done to him. But Tamir Rice doesn't even get a childhood. Trayvon Martin doesn't even get distance from suspicion. George Floyd doesn't even get oxygen. When black humans are killed, the conversation runs the other way. Were they perfect? Were they polite? Did they follow every order? What was in their system? Were they no angel? We put them on trial for their own deaths. We dig into their records, their photos, their school disciplinary slips, searching for something that will let us feel less bad about what happened. We do not ask what kind of system produces this level of saturation of black suffering. We ask, what did he do to make the system respond that way? And when someone raises the question of responsibility, of reparations, of repair, of duty to a people captured, held, and exploited for generations, the answers you hear are the same ones you never heard about whales. I didn't own slaves. That was a long time ago. Why should I pay for what my ancestors did? Can't we just move on? Slavery is over. What more do you want? You will accept intergenerational responsibility for a whale in a tank, but not for a people in a country. You will say, we have to take care of them. It's our fault, about an orca who cannot speak your language. But you say, that wasn't me, I owe you nothing, to a black neighbor whose entire existence is shaped by a system you're still benefiting from right now. This is not a talk about whales, as you probably have come to understand. This is a conversation about your moral imagination. It is about who you instinctively see as human and who you have been trained to see as a problem. About who gets the benefit of the doubt and who gets the full weight of the law. About who is allowed to be complicated, wounded, traumatized, forgivable, and who must be flawless just to be allowed to live. Because if your heart cracks for Shamu before it cracks open for Tamir, if you can feel the pain of a whale's captivity more readily than the architecture of black captivity that built your country, then we're not starting from neutral ground. We're starting from a world where black culture is entertainment, but black suffering is politics. Black joy is consumable, but black grief is inconvenient. Black bodies are resources, but black lives are negotiable. We're starting from a world where an orca can kill 3 people and still be read as a victim of his conditions, while a black child can be killed by the state and still be read as a suspect in his own murder. This is the hypocrisy this dialogue is here to expose. So let's begin with a simple, uncomfortable question. If you can understand why a killer whale deserves empathy, care, and long-term repair for a captivity it did not choose, what would it take for you to see black people in the same way? Thank you.